Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a fantastic day with enlightening and inspiring presentations, and I'd like us to take it into the home stretch. And I hope you found your business meetings enlightening as well. And I'd like to introduce our next two speakers. Carlo Maria. When Carlo Maria walks around a city, he doesn't look at the buildings. He looks at the people and the way they interact and experience their surroundings. Seeing the built environment through the eyes of its inhabitants gives him a deeper understanding of what a place wants and needs to be. From high-rise buildings to shopping centers, Carlo is an expert at translating a visions client into places where people enjoy spending time. Cities exist for people to exchange goods, services, and ideas. Larry works on the ideas. How to best serve a client's needs, or how to design a place, a master plan, a resort, a sports arena, an airport where people can enjoy the time they spend there. To that end, Larry's job is to present audacious concepts in a compelling fashion, winning new clients and inspiring existing clients to take exceptional action. And now I'd like to turn it over to Carlo and Larry. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you very much. We're extremely happy to be here. Hey, I see Larry's face. I'm about to share my screen. Please, guys, let me know if you can see my screen. That's great.
Yeah, looks good.
Guys, again, extremely happy to be here. My name is Carlo Maria Ciampoli. My co-conspirator. We're obviously, separated, many miles apart, but together in spirit. And I hope you guys are going to enjoy this little journey we're going to guide you through. Our talk, Human Desires in a Time of Disruption. We're Stantec Visioning Brands and Experiences Group. We work all over the world, across market, across disciplines. We're a group, part of a big corporation, Stantec, but we're a group of 24 designers coming from all walks of life. And what we do, we create places, we design places where people elect to spend their time. We don't pretend to be futurists, so we're not gonna pretend that we have a crystal ball and predict what the future is going to be. But what we are good at is to understand and seeing patterns that go across market, geography, and culture. And so we want to just tell you what we're seeing right now. Barry.
Yeah, by the way, Carlo, I'll ask you to do this. If my connection is not great, if you don't hear me clearly, just tell me and I'll walk inside and reconnect.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay, so let me know.
It's great.
Yeah, so I'm Larry. Our voices are pretty distinct, so you'll be able to tell, even those of you who aren't, who don't have access to video. Yeah, I would just say that Carlo and I are co-presenting today, and I think it was a natural thing to do because this is how we work. The emphasis on all the work that we do is on ideas that connect enterprise with people. And so it's pretty natural for us to do this as a conversation, because that's probably how we spend 30% of our design time, is just conversing as a means of evolving ideas. So with that, Carlo, if you can advance the slide, I want to just give a little more color on Carlo's credentials. This guy, as you may have judged by his accent, was born in Italy, in a small fishing town. However, he's not a fisherman, to my disappointment. But what he is a citizen of the world. Carlo has lived all over the world from, and I'll hit a few of the highlights, lived and worked from Hong Kong to New York City. Carlo, of course, did a significant stint in Rome. He's lived in Mexico City, and now we're fortunate enough to have him in Boulder. And the reason that I think he's incredibly qualified for a conversation about human desire and places for people is because Carlo, and this also makes him a good friend of mine, loves people. He loves food, he loves being together with people, and he's a keen observer of human behavior and human motivation. And so for that reason, it's just been a real delight to work with Carlo and even to think with him about this conversation today. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
You know, on the red corner, you know, and 170 pounds away, we got, Larry, the ideator Weeks. Larry was born and raised in the south part of the U.S. But, when grew up, kind of migrated into kind of the northern side of the Americas to pursue his passion for trail running. And here in the Boulder, Colorado, you can find him outpacing mountain goats, or having heated debates about how the power of ideas and their ability to shape place, culture. Larry, it's a really kind of great co-conspirator in all kind of our design, because he's a person in the room that always kind of reminds everybody that ideas are what matter. Ideas can change places. Ideas can change people. And what I like to think about is his wisdom about cultural trends and his ability to kind of see patterns. It's surpassed only by his kind of superhuman speed. So think about him as a mix of kind of Yoda and Usain Bolt. But that's enough with us. Both Larry and I, although our design company Vibe is an extremely multidisciplinary firm, we both have an architectural background. And when you look at the U.S. especially, but a little bit kind of all over the world, anywhere, what you see as the kind of prevailing language, it's a modernism. It's a language that's minimal. It's a sort of monoculture. It's for all of you that are listening right now that use or have used SketchUp in the past. What I personally see when I kind of go around the U.S. and I kind of happen, or I used to travel a lot before this kind of situation we're in, I would see buildings that look like SketchUp buildings, or a landscape that look like SketchUp landscape. There's a sort of like monoculture right now that's kind of prevailing that derives from a lot of the things that we kind of study in school. That's it's about tool like repetition, the divine proportion, sacred geometry. A lot of rules that we were taught are the ones that are perfect to create places. But we believe that modernism creates the places not really kind of for people. It creates places for kind of an absolute or just an average person. But we're transitioning. Our society is transitioning to a customization full society where one size fits all. It's no longer the rule. So here when you think about the famous Mies van der Rohe sentence, form follows function. In between these three F's, there is not a lot of space for people. And we really think that society is going in a completely different direction. That's why, a little bit as a provocation, but we want to think about form, follow, fun. And here on the left side, he is Karim Rashid. Probably a lot of us, all of you know who he is, and extremely kind of accomplished designer, interior designer with the interior and products kind of all over the world. And actually, just a few minutes before I was preparing for the lecture, Larry, I thought that maybe after this we should have had a picture of Mies in a pink dress. I think it would have been pretty impactful. Maybe we'll do it next time. But the point is, again, it's like society is really changing, and people crave colors, texture, and story. The spaces that we're kind of used to inhabit and think about are kind of really kind of short-lived. Even if you think about office space, think about an 80s cubicle farm, and think about a Google office today, and where we're going with that. People want to have different spaces to inhabit, spaces that can fit them, suit them as a, pink tailor suit. So,
and Carlo, I see the image a few seconds after you change it. So if there's a delay, that's
okay.
why. But it's interesting. These magazine covers are all taken from magazines that are 2020. And as you can see, that kind of language of modernism, still that pursuit of what I would call timelessness, or the kind of universality of design, is still alive and well in schools, in our culture, and certainly in the magazines that promote these things. I think one of the biggest shifts that we see in the culture and also in the way that we design is a shift from that pursuit of timelessness to, as you can see on the title here, a pursuit of dialogue or relevance. By definition, something that is universal or divine is detached from its temporal or physical context. And to us, what we see a much greater response to is things that are in harmony and in lockstep, or even anticipating where the culture is moving. So rather than striving for timelessness, we strive for relevance and dialogue with the people that interact with our space. In a lot of ways, I like this statement. Modernism, the machine for living, which is a term that we've all heard a lot, has shifted in a lot of ways toward the pursuit of pleasure. I mean, when you think about it too, when you think about it, we've been liberated lately from the strictures of, it used to be that we had to work, we had to live in the same city where we worked. We're now sort of liberated from a location standpoint, and even from a job standpoint. It's very much the employee's market now. So employers are doing everything they can to attract employees. So we have the choice of where we live and how we live. And so design is shifting to reflect that. And I think as evidence of this, what I'm seeing on the screen right now is something that nearly everyone holds in the highest regard, and that is these portions of the city that are what we would call on the edge. And they're that moment where the warehouse district or the industrial district becomes refashioned into something that is highly social. We can all think of them in Denver. We live in Boulder, but in Denver, right next door, we have a district called Rhino. When I lived in Seattle, when I lived there 15 years ago, Belltown was the edge. And why is it, I've often wondered why, and Carlo and I have talked a lot about, why is it that these places that mix industrial, warehouse, purpose-built buildings with this sort of social cues are so alluring to us? And I'll tell you, I think it's because these are the moments in our culture of maximum contrast between desires suppressed in the form of the workplace, which were warehouses and factories, and now we've visited upon them the expression of desire. So we see this great contrast, and it makes us aware of how far we've come as a society toward the pursuit of our desires. And so we love these places. I can't see the next slide. Go ahead, Carlo. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Another phenomenon, just to kind of piggyback what you were saying, Larry, it's the rise of festival culture. And again, it's the festival culture is evidence of kind of how desire becomes like a new kind of muse for next kind of generations. Festivals are the kind of ultimate expression of how to be kind of free and how to be kind of whoever you want. You can go to a festival and create your avatar and just live it in a fantasy world for a few days. It's a project that Larry and I kind of work together. It's called Electric Forest. It's a music festival in Rockbridge, Michigan. And the reason why we kind of venture as designers at the edge of retail and entertainment, like in this case, is because we see that a lot of the theme that spring up from culture are slowly starting leaching into society, leaching to retail, and think about pop-ups and the idea of changeability and the kind of refreshability of content. It's something, again, it's kind of moving out from the festival culture and into the world.
So I think really what we're seeing is a shifting in the design toolkit. So Carlo, you referenced before, you know, the kind of, you know, modernist tools of sacred geometries or repetition. Often the color palette is incredibly neutral with primary accents, rhythm. All these things, of course, are still perfectly valid and great tools, but you know what? They're just not enough. They're just not enough. So the question is, what is the new toolkit that is more in step with the pursuits that the current human condition leads us toward? And so that led us to the observation that the real design drivers now, the real toolkit, is a toolkit that's built around the notion of human desires. So we thought a lot, and we're not the only ones to have done this, about human desires. And philosophers have been doing this for, you know, centuries and centuries. And depending on the culture, the results are quite different. But we thought about human desire today and tried to understand how it is that we could develop a schema around that would allow us to create a series of tools around the notion of human desire. And so we've boiled it down. We think kind of all desire fits into the following 5 categories. And so what we'll do is quickly go through the 5 human desire tools that we overlay onto the existing modernist tools in order to create places for people. And by the way, these are in order, and this is very subjective, but I believe, and Carlo and I sometimes disagree on this, which I think is a happy outcome of a great conversation. Let's feel free to disagree now. But these are placed in the order, I believe, of the emphasis that they receive in today's society. And that changes over time, absolutely. But today, I think one of the fundamental desires that we see the most that people exercise, that we get out of the bed in the morning to do, is to connect with other people. And the computer and the online presence has not replaced this. In fact, it's in some ways amplified it because it's awakened our hunger for it. The more screen time we use, the more face time we desire. So this notion, which is born, by the way, out of the fundamental urge for procreation, it's a very biological thing, has morphed and become more sophisticated, but it results in this need for face-to-face connection with other humans. And that drives a lot of our actions. Yeah, go ahead, Carlo.
Well, I think that you know, the second one that I want to talk about quickly, it's the desire to kind of protect. That's a, you know, at the very kind of basic level, it's just a desire for safety. So emotional stability, well-being, you know, health security, financial security. And I think that, you know, whenever you think about, you know, protect in a kind of architectural way, you can think about, you know, walled cities. But when you think about how that concept, that notion kind of evolved with time, it's you know, today's cities are kind of walled with ideas. You know, you think about Boulder and the idea of living outdoor, or you know, you think about Austin and you think about the idea of you know, fun and weirdness. And I think that also, you know, the desire to kind of protect translates into, you know, wellness, you know, personal sustainability, wellness, and in architecture and interior design to the creation of, you know, standards like, you know, LEED and you know, WELL and similar. Here, you know, we go to, you know, our third desire to grow, and you know, desire to grow. It's a really kind of basic level. It's designed to learn. It's a design to kind of, you know, pursue our, you know, aspiration. It's kind of the ability to kind of educate ourselves. And in the background here, it's an image of an interior project that we've done for kind of Western Union. We worked on redesigning their headquarters. And one of the main tools that we use was storytelling, telling the story of kind of one of the kind of oldest company in the United States. And you know, we wanted for everybody that kind of worked in that quarter, that kind of passed by, to learn something new every time.
And then the last 2 desires that we think are very relevant to mention now would start with acquire, that notion of acquisition. This in contemporary society, we think is one that's quite prevalent. When I talk to my children, for example, about fundamental desires, and I had this conversation with them, acquisition, the notion of evidence of your aspirations, assent, your ability to protect yourself, but creating evidence around that is a way to gain status, and it's very relevant in our culture today. So you can see, for example, this happens to be Metica, which is a large project that we designed in Mexico City, which is designed actually one of the first recent projects in Mexico to celebrate the middle class by spanning upper class all the way down to the lower class and including everyone in this place. It has moments of celebration of upper class and wealth, and this happens to be one of those at this kind of porte cochere entrance. So it's clearly a statement around acquisition. And then the last one, and this is a fairly recent one to the game. There were times in the history of humanity where this one was relatively irrelevant, but we've been fortunate enough lately to add this to the list, which is to say that we've accomplished many of the other desires, but the notion of feel, the notion of having a desire for places that move us emotionally, to participate in emotional experiential places is something that lately we crave more and more, and we'll talk about that a bit in a minute. So once we've defined these tools and we believe in these tools, which we do, we then can start to apply those to our design, both in terms of as we create new designs and as we reflect on existing designs, we can evaluate the degree to which places in the world that we've designed or others have designed correspond with these and see whether or not the evidence of these desire sets yield interesting spaces. And so we have 4 or 5 examples of this that we'll show you. I'll tell you one thing that we found is that places that deliver on at least, I'll say half of these, which is to say 3 of the 5, not exactly half, tend to be places, as Carlo mentioned before, we design places where people elect to spend their time. They want to go more frequently. They want to stay more often. We think places that can deliver across 3 of these design sets at least are places where people tend to go. And we'll show you what we mean by that. This happens to be LA Live. We created the original vision for LA Live, which is the kind of what we call a content plaza in downtown Los Angeles. By the way, there were many architects involved in this beyond our group, and I want to make sure I share credit with the fact that this had many authors, but the overall vision was something that we largely conceived. And so let's think about this for real fast, just for a second, about how it corresponds to these desire sets. So when it comes to Connect, I think it's pretty clear. This is a large space. The entire premise of its existence is to be a place where people come together to celebrate various kind of real-time performances and occurrences, from the Emmys to product releases, et cetera. So it's all about humans connecting. So I could say it delivers fully on the kind of connection set of desires. And then when it comes to protect, similarly, it performs quite well. First, in the most rudimentary sense, it is a negative space within the positive space of the city. So it's protected physically in that way by tall buildings all around this plot. But I think maybe more importantly in this day and age, it has a sort of skin of dynamic media. You can see some of the towers in the space now, and then on the building faces themselves, there are several instances of dynamic media. So if this is if this is a celebration of a Lakers victory on one hand, or the release of a new tech product on another, the group of people that are here can resonate with the imagery and sounds that are happening across the dynamic media that comprise the skin of this plaza, so that they feel at ease and comfortable and among other like minds. That is a very strong form of protection. In terms of growth, well, this is all about new releases, new products, new culture. The nature of that is about growing and learning and changing and staying in touch with the times. So we get that almost for free in this space as well. When it comes to acquisition, the idea of acquiring, one form of acquisition, we all think of material acquisition, but the fact is in today's culture, the idea of standing at a live event and having a selfie moment that says, hey, I'm a part of this thing and you're not, or you are as well, that's a way of celebrating your worth with other people. So that from an acquisition standpoint, I think it also delivers very high. And then from a feel standpoint, of course, this place is, with its sound and its ever-changing visual, very emotionally rich space dedicated to the notion of enhanced feel. So we think it delivers pretty high across all of these when there's an event going on. I will say, when there's no event going on, this is not it, by the way, but we would love to go back and enhance its contribution on non-event days. Now, by contrast, this is an outdoor public space that could have been like LA Live, could have been something else. Well, let's look at this for a moment. Now, are there any cues about human connection? There aren't even any seats here. There's very little reason to believe that you're going to connect with other people here. So we would give it low marks around the notion of connection. Protect, yeah, it does accomplish the physical aspect of protection, but when it comes to the intellectual idea of creating a place of like mind where you feel intellectually safe and surrounded by others who share your beliefs, you don't see much evidence of that. In fact, you seem to be surrounded by corporate expression, which sometimes makes a person feel vulnerable and small. When it comes to grow, very, very little stimuli related to forwarding ideas or thoughts. Acquisition, well, maybe it certainly has rich materials, and it could be surrounded by powerful corporation expressions. But again, I think what that does to the individual that happens to be is to make them feel small. So I don't think that we can give it high marks when it comes to acquisition. And in terms of its emotional contribution, relatively low as well. And for that reason, this place doesn't tend to be a place that is sought after by people.
Well, Larry, and I'm gonna keep going through a few more examples that we collected, but I'm just gonna do kind of brief highlights because I see that we kind of passed our a half time. We still have a lot of things to cover. So this is another image from Electric Forest, and obviously when we talk about protection, the idea of participating and being part of a tribe, this is the kind of ultimate expression. And I think that to me the other thing to highlight here, obviously the feel, the experiential part of this, it's a kind of super high. And this specific image, you'll see how the lighting of this project is kind of so kind of unique and kind of mesmerizing, and so how important it is to kind of create experiences that are kind of relevant. It's important to use every kind of tool that we have. Here it's an image of a round-the-mill grocery store. It's like this is a place that is all devoted to the desires of acquiring, obviously. And we've seen these kind of crazy times how a lot of those shelves have been kind of empty for weeks and months. And obviously, with that comes a concept of protecting, just acquiring to kind of survive kind of long term. But obviously, there is no indication of any kind of connection between people, any kind of experiential kind of highlight, or any moment of kind of real learning. But think for a second about the same concept translated, into from the Spanish. It's a mercado in Spain, where it's at its basic level, it's the same thing as a grocery store. But obviously, it kind of delivers on all desires, because this is a place where you go with friends to have dinner. And you experience the place, you experience the smell, you create relationship with the vendors. And so again, this is just to show how the same concept of a place where you go and acquire food can be fulfilling if it hits all the desire or not. This is an image of iFly, an indoor skydiving experiential retailer that we design all over the world, and here it's our kind of deep dive into what kind of experiential retail is in the last the last kind of few years.
So all this talk about desire is I think incredibly relevant, particularly post. So now enter COVID, and a very interesting thing is happening. I mean, first, for those of you who wonder about this philosophy of is desire driving design more now than the kind of fundamental principles that we were all taught in school, I think one great way to test the veracity of something is to remove it and see how that feels. For those of you who ever have had your electricity turn off, or maybe your water turn off, it's amazing how much you come to appreciate your water and your electricity. Event occurs. My Wi-Fi went out the other day, which I was kind of okay with that, but my 2 teenage children changed as humans as a result of that, and I think they came in that 24-hour period to really appreciate the presence of Wi-Fi. And now, similarly, we have COVID, and it's diabolical in that it has gone to the heart of each of these desire sets in its kind of own way. It almost seems intentional. I mean, from a connection standpoint, it's obviously, it prevents us from connecting. The thing we do when we feel threatened is we connect with those that we love, our extended family, et cetera. We can't. From a protection standpoint, I mean, obviously, we all feel incredibly vulnerable, so vulnerable that many of us are afraid to leave our houses. And for very, good reason. And from a growth standpoint, we can measure that in a lot of ways, but one obvious way, again, I have 2 children who should be going to school soon. And, from a learning, this is the most obvious form of learning standpoint, they can't go. And there's a real question as to whether they're going to start up again. It's a serious issue, and it both in terms of schools, but also the workplace. The amount of learning that's occurring is really challenged. I mean, this forum hopefully is contributing in some way to that, but it's very certainly from a standpoint of acquisition, the idea of acquiring anything or sharing your acquisition with the world is difficult now. And of course, when it comes to feel or expression, we're all bottled up in our home. So that also been disabled. Now, I think it's interesting to think about what this situation, this challenge, this removal of our ability to exercise our desires has done, even in the workplace. I mean, most all of us are designers, and I'll tell you, just to commiserate for a minute, the things that we're seeing, and I'm going to talk about the dark side of the COVID situation, because there are certainly, interesting discoveries that occur when we're challenged, but for the moment, we'll stay on the dark side at work. And really, I'm extremely proud of our culture and our achievements at Stantec and in our office, Vibe, Visioning Brands and Experiences. So I think it's a special place, and I think we're more fortified than many cultures, to be honest, because we've worked so hard on our culture. But even in our office, I see these things happening. First of all, there's a scarcity of projects. So if any of you have any projects and you want to contribute against that scarcity, help us out, let us know. But the scarcity of projects causes people to rally around projects that are going forward in small groups, and it creates little tribes within our office. If we're not careful, you can see a little bit of that. The serendipity that occurs, people moving around in the office and serendipity of ideas and interaction has been essentially removed. So the culture has been diminished somewhat. I mean, it's still strong and I'm still proud of it, but I'll tell you, it's being diminished over time by this COVID assault. This working online is great for solving specific tasks, kind of command and control, but it's not nearly as good for the messy vitality of creativity. So I think our creativity could suffer a little bit if we're not careful. We're working hard so it doesn't, but it's a real challenge to that. Certainly communication and our ability to focus. I mean, Netflix is up, 35% by now? I don't think all that watching is happening after working hours. I think our focus is something we have to really work on as well. So anyway, things are very interesting right now as a society, but maybe Carl, you can talk about some of the lighter side of these things.
Well, absolutely, Larry. I mean, I definitely think that there's always kind of light at the end of the tunnel, right? And it's the greatest thing is that our desires persist, and during times of struggle. There's always innovation that comes on the other side, and so I think that now what we want to do is we want to go back to the 5 desires that we kind of described before, and look at them to understand how they change, how they morph due to these huge events that are happening right now, and see if again if they change how, and how trends that were start to appear before those events or disrupting events are being accelerated now. And so,
and hopefully we can point out some of the kind of keepers, some of the things that may persist beyond COVID. So yeah, go ahead, Carl.
well, absolutely, Larry, and I really hope that the deep feeling of connection that we've been seeing as a result of, it's like one of the things that kind of all the lockdowns and everything that's happening brought out is that humans are social animals, and so no matter what the cage is, we we want to connect. So here on the left side you'll see an image. This is Italy, and there are two apartment buildings facing each other, and those are neighbors that again can't just meet up in downstairs to have a glass of wine together, and they're doing a wellness class from balcony to balcony, because again the desire to kind of connect between people, it's kind of too strong.
I think we've all probably seen as we walk around our own neighborhoods. I mean, one of the beauties of what's happening now is that things that would happen behind closed doors and dark are now happening outside and in the light, because it's less dangerous to be outside. So we see people, 6 feet apart, gathering in their front yards, people who I haven't seen in a long time in my neighborhood, their friends I've now met. So it's kind of a wonderful occurrence that I think, that kind of using the front yard again, using the porch again, well, using the front yard as a porch, activating neighborhood life is something that I think will persist. And then similarly, this is actually in Boulder, and there's a pedestrian mall that is the heart of Boulder, an outdoor downtown called Pearl Street Mall. For those of you who do not know, we designed it 30 years ago and refreshed it 6 or 7 years ago. It's one of the big pedestrian outdoor environment success stories in our country. Well, now just to the west of that pedestrian area has grown 2 blocks. So you're seeing now a place that once would have just had car traffic has been returned to its use as a public space, accessible not just by people who have cars, but by everyone. And so what's interesting here, and again, I know we're not unique in Boulder, which is a great thing, the restaurants that line this street now have, in a kind of grassroots way, assembled these sort of tables and umbrellas, sometimes right outside of their restaurant, sometimes slightly down and across the street from their restaurant. But the result is this really rich mix of restaurant expressions, and then you have a band playing over on the right-hand side. This is the sun in the foreground. I was actually sitting at this table one evening, and I just snapped this picture. It's a wonderful, wonderful street life that is a response to this suppression of our desire to connect. And I would argue, and again, since we designed the pedestrian mall adjacent to this to begin with, I'd argue that this aspect of the pedestrian mall, this new aspect, is maybe more interesting because it's more grassroots, it's more of the people, more interesting and innovative. So I think there are a lot of lessons to learn from this. And
Larry, I think that,
go ahead, yeah.
Talking about the keepers, I personally can really hope that this people can reappropriate the street. It's something that is going to stay with us for a long time. This is a picture of Milan. And Milan a couple of months ago, started this plan of it's called strade aperte, or open streets, where they're really taking back I think 35 kilometers of streets to kind of give back to the people, give back to bikers, creating parklets and like tactical kind of urbanism, little areas where kids can play and people can feel comfortable.
Carlo, if my math is right, we have like 8 minutes left. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. We better hurry up. We don't have that much more to cover. Let's hurry up because it's inelegant to finish when our slides aren't done. So let's.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, protect. I think that when we think about the future, protect. It's all about trust. In the future, I mean, right now already, and this is a picture of Tom's cafe and shop in Venice Beach. People, are going to try to be close to the brands that are able to express their values, their mission, and they're true to their values and their mission. Obviously, Tom's it's a very kind of popular shoe brand that kind of donates one shoe on any shoe that you buy. And so this idea, obviously, of kind of giving, it's an idea that attracts a lot of people to kind of subscribe to this tribe. I mean, where kind of trust kind of lies, connection are kind of always kind of seamless. And I think that, if you think about food, people now want to know the story of their food, where the food has come from, what kind of treatments, how much they travel, and so there is a resurgence of gardening, of personal production of food. There is garden supplies and plant store have kind of seen a huge increase in business because in this time people want to be closer to nature, and again, this concept of growing, protecting, wellness, it's something that's going to stay with us for a long time. And at the same time, the companies that are going to be more successful are the ones that are going to be able to clearly, broadcast their values, their vision for the future.
Well, and similar to companies doing that, also districts can do that. I talked before about these kind of edge districts, and really when you look at some of these murals, this is just another version of the kind of corporate expression of values. This is to say, hey, our values, maybe it's a different value set, maybe it has to do with artistry or life on the edge. I mean, I'm not going to guess at what this means, but it attracts a certain group of people that otherwise wouldn't find comfort in these areas. And that's a very interesting thing. It's a way of opening up doors to a more diverse audience by adding and broadening voice of a place. And, similarly on Fifth Avenue in front of Gucci or maybe Trump Tower, now there's a mural on the street that says Black Lives Matter. This is something that's happening in society right now. And it's interesting because this means obviously a lot of things. But one thing that it does is it creates an invitation to people who otherwise may not have felt comfortable or protected on this street at this moment in Fifth Avenue. And that's a very interesting phenomenon that relates back to this notion of desire. And then similarly, one thing that I think is fascinating, I'll try to do this really quickly because we're essentially out of time. This notion of growth, there's a lot of thoughts and controversy around the notion of Confederate, statues being torn down. I want to, not take a side on any of this. It's a fascinating thing, and it's a very, valid set of ideas that are happening, I'm sure, on both sides. But the notion that these statues, these objects that have stood for decades or centuries are now being called into the question because of the story they represent, because of the meaning of the story. Is very interesting. This notion of growing and learning and sharing stories and becoming familiar with history is more important to our society. And you see things grow as a result or vanish as a result. And so creating more story and weaving that into places is going to become more and more relevant. Storytelling. You can keep going to the next one, Carlo, I think.
Well, and when we talk about how the desire of acquiring it's kind of completely shifting. Right now there is a continuum between buying a product in a store or online, and what's kind of clear now is that retailers are completely reinventing where and how to meet their customers. And in this project, this is it's a project that we're currently working on, where we're helping some of our clients re-envisioning the experience of a curbside pickup. And restaurants and retailers alike are doing great business right now because of COVID through kind of curbside pickup. But how can we reinvent this experience so it's not just like going and parking in a parking lot and waiting for someone to bring you your package, but how we can engage with the brands that we love and that we share trust with.
Let's go to the last one, Carlo, because we have about a minute or two. And then yeah, we can look at those. And then the very last is this notion of feel. And the fact is, it's easy to imagine in the near future that all buying could be done online, which leaves physical places to the social act, not the rational act of buying, but the social act of socializing, shopping together, experiencing things together. So we believe that physical locations are going to shift more and more, as you're seeing here, to experiences. And so those are the kind of 5 desire sets after COVID, and an idea of some of the things that will persist. And I think,
I think that you know, one of the main kind of takeaways, it's always that that there are architectural and interior design paradigms and rules that we learn in school, and that we kind of see everywhere around us. But for us, the center of every place and every desire is a human.
And desire will persist, and it is a force that cannot be stopped. And so we believe shaping design in places around desire is the future as far as we can see it now. Thank you for your time. I don't know how much time we have for questions.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm checking the feed right now to see if we have anything. Let's refresh it really quick. Don't see. Oh, hang on 1 second. Well, if we do have questions that come in at the end, what we'll do is we'll message them to you through the platform, so you'll be able to answer them. They'll go directly to your inbox, and we'll let you know who sent the questions so you can communicate your answer back to them. But wanted to thank you both, Carlo and Larry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I sincerely hope there are questions, because dialogue is how we advance our thinking. So we would invite that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. We're up against a very difficult battle right now, and just having these collaborations and these dialogues with each other, we're able to figure out how we're going to get through this the best way we possibly can.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, and it was great
pleasure.
to have you both. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. It's been a fantastic day of knowledge exchange and dialogue, and we hope everything has been enlightening for you. We look forward to seeing you at a future in-person conference, and we'll keep you up to date on what's happening with Opal Group and SpArc Interiors as we continue to monitor the pandemic. Be sure to keep an eye on our LinkedIn and our website for upcoming programs to see that you could participate once again. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.